Now to the 2024 race, with Donald Trump's many legal cases depleting his campaign coffers. And there's a strategy, perhaps born of that necessity. Instead of hosting his own familiar but expensive arena-style rallies, Trump is now going to where the crowds are already assembled, events where others are footing the bill. This weekend, he used a NASCAR race in Battleground, North Carolina as a campaign stop after a rocky reception in Washington, where he got booed at the Libertarian National Convention. Joining me now, Brendan Buck, former senior aide to former House Speakers Paul Ryan and John Boehner, and former Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards of Maryland. Both are MSNBC political analysts. You know, Brendan, you and I have talked many times before about how the cost of his criminal trials could hurt Donald Trump's campaign. Are we starting to see its impact now, or is he finding a clever way to get around it?
Maybe both. Look, the reason you hold events like this is or big events is so that you're in control. You control the narrative. You control who's in the room. All of those things. Now, there is an efficiency and a cost savings certainly to jumping on board. And he's hardly the first person to show up to another event. But what you end up seeing is what happened at the Libertarian Convention. You're not in control of that crowd, and you end up getting booed. That's the last thing that you want. Now, these big events are a hallmark of the Trump campaign. I imagine he's going to figure out how to get back on there. I wonder if it's more that this is just a campaign that is distracted by what's been going on in the courts, and they're unable to really hit the ground running and run the campaign that they want to. And maybe that will be shifting after this trial ends, but certainly you got to be imagining Trump is eager to get back in front of those big folks who are cheering him instead of booing him.
Donna, today would seem to be kind of a slam dunk for a pre-made audience, right? There's all these Memorial Day parades. There's remembrances. Often presidential candidates will make an appearance. There's nothing on Donald Trump's public schedule for today. And while money is obviously one part of what we're going to see from him, the other may arguably be stamina, right? A lot of folks who are observers in the courtroom talked about how exhausting it has been for him to be in the courtroom every day. And then in the middle of the week on Wednesdays, he was often doing events. How do you manage that stuff when you're running a campaign? And obviously by that stuff, we've never seen what's happening to Donald Trump right now.
Well, I think that's certainly true. I mean, look, it's really clear that the trial is taking its toll on Donald Trump. And I think his ability to juggle between what he's doing in the courtroom in Manhattan versus what he needs to do on the campaign trail. I mean, it is the reason that you saw, the organized rally in the Bronx, something close by. He did one near his golf course in New Jersey. Again, I think, trying to conserve his energy and his time to make space for these trials. And it's not going to get easier as the calendar marches toward November. And I do think that Brendan is right. There is a money issue, and he doesn't have the same kind of juice to draw those large crowds that he did back in 2016. And certainly a lot less in 2020. So he has to go to these prepared and pre-planned events in order to maximize the time that he's spending out on the campaign trail.
So, Brendan, one major and free swath of publicity will come when he makes the announcement of a running mate. Politico is reporting that there is pressure on him to name a moderate, maybe even Nikki Haley, although there are a lot of people who might disagree with that. But we know this race will largely be decided among the small group, largely in the middle. So would a moderate be a smart move? It's not like the conservatives who are following him are going to jump ship at this point.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm sure he'll take that under advisement from people, but I don't imagine Trump is listening to those types of folks. I think Donald Trump feels relatively burned by picking Mike Pence last time, obviously because of what happened on January 6th. But remember, this was sort of a forced marriage with Mike Pence. He didn't know Mike Pence. There were a lot of people like my old boss, Paul Ryan, and others like Newt Gingrich who are urging him to take someone that would sort of bridge those two worlds, sort of traditional Republicans and Trump. I don't think he feels any need to do that anymore. I think he's going to pick whoever he thinks will do the best job being loyal to him, repeating the messaging, whatever it takes. Donald Trump, I think, is beyond the point of trying to appeal to the middle. He's going to run his campaign the way he wants to. And so I obviously politically that makes a lot of sense, but Donald Trump thinks very differently than I do.
So, Donna, meanwhile, President Biden had a kind of, I would say, not so thinly veiled criticism of Trump at his commencement address at West Point. He told the graduating class that their oath is to the Constitution, not any political party or president. I mean, these are typically more apolitical speeches. But we have seen a little bit with Biden, a shift in strategy. He's been tougher on Trump. He's been invoking his name more, for example, as a threat to democracy. It's still pretty early in the campaign to be amping up, but do you think it's necessary on Biden's part?
I am really pleased with this new direction of the Biden campaign. I think that the charges against Donald Trump have to become sharper and more focused. As it is, we see in poll after poll that the American people are not really making the kinds of distinctions between President Biden and former President Trump. And in order to do that, in order to focus the public's attention, the Biden campaign, President Biden has to be much more sharp in its attacks against Donald Trump and telling the American people the threat that Donald Trump represents, because otherwise it allows Donald Trump to just kind of whitewash the past and move on by things like January 6th on into this campaign. The Biden camp cannot afford to let that happen.
So let me ask you, Brendan, about the high-stakes week ahead in Manhattan court. We've mostly talked about what it means, right, for Donald Trump. But there have to be lots of conversations going on Team Biden. What's the response? Whether he's guilty or not guilty, do you just say, this is the way a democratic system works, the jury has spoken? Or do you have a more significant, deeper, broader response to whatever happens?
Well, I've been relatively struck by the fact that the Biden administration, or not the Biden administration, but the Democratic campaign apparatus at large has been awfully hands-off over the last several weeks. And I understand why Biden doesn't want to look like this is political, but it feels like the exact same mistake that all of the primary contenders running against Donald Trump did, was just let it hang out there, hope that people see it, and hope people turn against him. And that just simply hasn't happened. Now, there needs to be some type of high-level Biden response that talks about the seriousness of it and tries to take the high ground. But it's long past time for Democrats to take off the gloves against Donald Trump as it relates to his criminal activity. I understand not wanting to dive in the mud on it, but this is one of the greatest opportunities politically anyone has ever had. Your opponent is on trial for felonies, and yet you are gaining no benefit from it. So I think at this point they have to look in the mirror and say, this might not be working for us. We may need to get a little more aggressive.
And Donna, we're out of time here, but do you agree with that? I'm guessing you do. And look, if there is a conviction, and we certainly don't know that, no one's been able to read this jury, but does the president, and maybe it's also the debate that's coming up, that's an opportunity, have to speak a little more forcefully?
Well, the president has to do two things. On the one hand, they have to absolutely stick with the line about upholding the rule of law and the Constitution and the jury system. And on the other hand, hit Donald Trump hard where it counts. We haven't had a former president who's been indicted on felonies before. The Biden campaign has to make sure that the American people understand that.
Brendan Buck, Donna Edwards, great to see both of you on this Memorial Day. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.